Hello, and welcome back to The Lie of Monogamy by Warren Michaels. This episode, Chapter 2, The Culture of Serial Monogamy. I don't think I'm supposed to reveal this until the end of the book, but the total sum of my reasons for sitting down to write all of this falls back on the cultural misconception of the word adultery. I realized this when I was having a discussion with my dad about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. Adultery's meaning in this day's society is simply when one spouse has sex with anyone else. This is a serious misunderstanding of that word. By this definition, most of the people mentioned in the Old Testament would be considered adulterers. Fornication is defined by many as any unlawful sexual act. The difference between fornication and adultery is marriage. However, adultery does not apply equally to both men and women according to the Bible. Sorry, ladies. When a married woman has sex with someone that is not her husband, this clearly is defined by the Bible as the truest definition of adultery that we can find. Now, looking at a man was always allowed to marry other women, with the exception of priests, deacons, etc. So, if a man has sex with another single woman besides his wife, his sin would be defined as fornication and not adultery. A man only commits adultery in two ways. Number one, if he has sex with someone else's wife, and number two, if he divorces his wife and marries another. The confusion that most people have with that second one is totally understandable considering the ways we've all been taught, especially if you're under 30 or 40 years old. Today's society is inundated with so many people that are remarried, it's no wonder why kids and even some adults don't even give the thought a second glance. I have tons of friends and family who have been divorced and remarried, more than once I might add, and this disturbs me, if for no other reason the situation that the children are put in. Despite children though, the divorcees are typically among the just as confused. They run to the nearest place to meet significant others and almost immediately, in some cases, take another spouse. The Bible speaks very clearly on this issue though. Matthew 19:9 says, "And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away, doth commit adultery." And again in Mark 10:11, "And he saith unto them, whosoever shall put away his wife, and marry another, committeth adultery against her." Insert here that this goes for women who put away their man too, which was kind of unheard of in biblical times. Biblically speaking though, irreconcilable differences were no reason for divorce. The disciples questioned Jesus on this matter after everyone left the area, and pretty much said, paraphrasing of course, "Then why even bother getting married?" The answer to the bewildered disciples was equally as astonishing. Verse 11 he says, "But he said unto them, All men cannot receive this saying, save to whom it is given." Verse 12, "For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it." Dare I say, if you've made it this far, then you may very well be one of the ones who can receive this saying. Though I don't recommend the eunuch thing, especially the made themselves eunuch part, because that's a pretty permanent solution to a temporary problem. As the title of this chapter implies, all of this marrying and remarriage stuff is a huge "I told you so" from the polygamous community. They have deemed the term for it serial monogamy. Many poly websites that you go to will argue, quite well too, that living a poly lifestyle rather than that of a serial monogamist is way more biblical. and more socially beneficial for all parties involved. Please don't get this confused with what radicals would say, though. The idea that women are property to be maintained by men is pretty disgusting. But when you mention polygamous marriage to a woman, that tends to be one of the first thoughts that goes through her head. I said earlier that I don't promote poly, but some would say that this sounds an awful lot like a promotion. I look at it as an alternative to what we've always been taught, especially now that the teaching seems to be leaning towards, oh, so you've married someone that you don't like anymore. Well, that's okay, just get a divorce and marry someone else. I don't care what religion you are, nationality you are, what moral standard you subscribe to. Serial monogamy is the most anti-biblical thing anyone could suggest to a couple who is struggling. Shame on the churches today who consider it commonplace to let this happen and even suggest it happen, and do nothing more than to be there to help clean up all the collateral damage. I think probably half or better of my friends come from broken homes. I've seen and been a part of many of the verbal and sometimes physical fights that happen in those homes. I know that people are sometimes truly better off without the person they are married to, but everyone needs to recognize that when you divorce someone, you are not supposed to remarry. The only part of the scenario that I was taught growing up is that you aren't supposed to divorce. I think that had we also added in the other half of this equation and let the young people know that you also aren't supposed to remarry should you get divorced, they really would think twice about marrying in the first place. Making a vow and breaking it is one thing, but when we are willfully committing sin and simultaneously causing others to sin, it's a much worse thing. Young people might take a little more time in finding who that special someone is when they know that the consequences of their actions might just affect the rest of their lives and the life of their next victim. Hey, Warren Michaels here. Just letting you know that if you liked that last video, be sure to subscribe either above or below depending on what type of device you're looking at. And if you really liked it, be sure to give me a comment, a like. Comments let me know if I'm giving the audience out there exactly what they want, which it doesn't really matter. I'm going to give you what I got, so I guess it's just all good. However, that brings me to my next point, that if you hated this video, be sure to subscribe anyway, so that way you can hate watch every single one of my videos. Thanks for watching.